Hello and welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to S.T.A.L.K.E.R Anomaly. Now, in today's video, I'm going to be talking about my S.T.A.L.K.E.R 2 wishlist, but I found that S.T.A.L.K.E.R Anomaly, and I've been playing just an ungodly amount of this over the last 2 days, so I found that that this is a great medium for me conveying my S.T.A.L.K.E.R 2 wishlist. For those of you that don't know, maybe aren't into these sort of videos, haven't seen them before, what this basically means is I would like to talk to you about what I would like to see in S.T.A.L.K.E.R 2, right? So somewhat straightforward and obvious, right? So a sort of list of features, general feel of the game, direction in which the design is supposed to head, or not supposed to head, that's very pretentious, the direction in which I would like to see it head, and so on and so forth. So I have some background footage here for you, and, well, look, I should turn off my phone when doing videos. Let's do that. Okay. So here's the thing. S.T.A.L.K.E.R Anomaly is basically a combination of all three previous S.T.A.L.K.E.R games put in one title. However, what's been done away with are most of the story-driven and sort of story quest elements from those three games in exchange for a more interactive, free, open-world sandbox mode, which is extremely brutal, or at least, depending on the difficulty, it can be challenging to extremely brutal. So, this by no means means that I think S.T.A.L.K.E.R 2 should not have a storyline. I'm just saying what S.T.A.L.K.E.R Anomaly is. But the reason I'm using this to sort of convey how I would like S.T.A.L.K.E.R 2 to go in what particular design direction is I think S.T.A.L.K.E.R Anomaly is the ultimate S.T.A.L.K.E.R experience. Now, I've been playing S.T.A.L.K.E.R Misery on the channel, and I think it's been like a week since I recorded the last episode. I've had exams, I've had some personal problems, let's say, recently, so yeah, I wasn't able to record and dedicate time to that. I'll be jumping into it later today, I think, or maybe early tomorrow. And S.T.A.L.K.E.R Misery is great. I think graphically and the atmosphere that it creates and the level of difficulty in the game, I think, is quite high, and the atmosphere is tremendous, but S.T.A.L.K.E.R Anomaly is, I would say, overall a more interesting sandbox experience. However, Misery does keep the story from the Call of Pripyat game, so that's kind of the reason why I'm playing it. Anyways, with that said, the quests in Anomaly do exist. There is a storyline for pretty much each of the factions, and you can play as any of the zone factions, right? From the military to Monolith to the Stalkers to the Ecologists to Clear Sky, Duty Freedom, Bandits, etc., mercenaries as well. So there is a storyline for each of those factions, however it is fairly limited. Essentially, it comes down to mainly interacting with your faction leader and doing a few quests for him, like helping out the faction in general. However, there are a few main story modes within the game, such as the Living Legend one, where you need to find the protagonist of the first game and basically see what the hell he found out at the end of what is basically all three of the S.T.A.L.K.E.R games, right? So there is a little bit of a story to that. There are also a few other ones with Clear Sky, I believe, and there's a couple of stories out there for you to find and do. However, all of this said and done, a lot of the story elements are basically down to you interacting with the world. So I'll give one tiny spoiler to the first game, which is Shadow of Chernobyl. In that game, you are supposed to go to lab, at a certain point in the story, you go to lab X16, and there you turn off a particular machine. Well, in this, I guess, title, I mean, it sort of strides the line between mod and, standalone game. Anyways, in S.T.A.L.K.E.R Anomaly, you basically get to do that again because someone reactivated the machine and you need to go and, deactivate it again as a different character this time round. And it is part of a story, and you need to get some adequate protection, like in the first game, to be able to approach the machine, so on and so forth. But it comes down to basically you paying for the helmet that you need to deactivate the machine, going down there, deactivating it, and then that's it. It's more about the way this influences the world, because with the machine now turned off, different factions can flood into the area that was previously inaccessible as a result of this machine, right? So it's more about modifying and changing the world and having an influence on it rather than, you know, a strong narrative-driven experience. There's not that much of that in Anomaly. That is something that I would love to see in S.T.A.L.K.E.R 2, a continuation of Strelok's story, which basically all three games revolve around, more or less, even though you play as three different characters. Your fates are all sort of tied around Strelok, inevitably. And I don't think we ever really got the full story about sea consciousness. About if you have no idea what I'm talking about, go and play the previous three games for the story. There's quite a few mods out there to update them both graphically and in a gameplay sense to improve them a little bit. But anyways, we never really got to see that truly to the end, and I would like to see a continuation of that. But I think a lot more important are the atmosphere that the game creates. And towards the end of the video, or actually at the very end of the video, I will put I think it's around like a 10-minute clip of me inside Lab X16, and I'll just show you the atmosphere of that, because to this day it is horror, right? It is a scary, scary, scary thing. The tiny little details that they've put into some of these areas. Some of them were rushed out, obviously. Some of them were just scrapped because there wasn't enough time to finish them. You know, it is how it is. I'm talking about the original games, and that sort of ports over here in some ways. But some of the details, some of the more important areas in the game, like X16, are so stupidly well done that you can really tell how much attention to detail and care has been put into these areas. I'll give you an example. When you enter the so when you go to X16, there is like a long hallway, and to the left is basically where I think it's like a bathroom, or it's a toilet room basically, right? Yeah, it's a toilet room. You go into there isn't a bath in there. There is a bath in a different room somewhere else. I'm getting two places confused. Sorry. There is like there's a toilet room to the left, and as you enter it, the pipes start to rattle. Because the idea is, right, that there's something in the pipes that's rattling. It's not a monster, it's just like a piece of rock or whatever, but it scares the living crap out of you. And it's not like an in-engine thing, it's just a sound that plays, but it plays exactly as you enter the toilet, right? That sound isn't anywhere else in the game. It's specifically made for X16, right? Also, some of the more important elements of X16 and the horror, such as the ghosts that do a little bit of damage to you, which only appear when there's actual enemies nearby, which I think is a wonderful touch, because you never really, I mean, even though you know that they're not real, quote-unquote, they can do a little bit of damage to you, but more importantly, they're there to scare you in the sense of there's actual enemies around, and the ghost that you see is the ghost of the actual enemy, just, you know, from somewhere else. And yeah, you can, like, they can go through walls and stuff and scare living daylights out of you. It is a phenomenal thing, and this feeling, this atmosphere of S.T.A.L.K.E.R persists throughout the entire game, and there's plenty of videos out there. I'll probably try and link a few of them in the comments or in the description, which basically talk about the very concisely and very to the point talk about why S.T.A.L.K.E.R, both Anomaly and the previous three games, were phenomenal titles from an atmosphere perspective, and from a storyline perspective as well. Really just terrific stuff. Basically, Anomaly does all of those things except from the narrative story part, blends them into one title instead of three separate ones, where all the areas are combined, adds interactivity to the world, adds dynamicness to the world. The zone feels alive because of something called offline combat, so that basically means that even though you don't see them and they aren't rendered in the engine, fights will be calculated throughout the zone as you walk up and down it. So, for example, there is one particular area that I was at where I expected to find a whole bunch of mutants. However, because I've been helping out the ecologists and I've led two squads of ecologists as a guide to this area, what they've done is they've actually entered the city and cleared out most of the mutants. I say most of them. There was, I think, one or two left, but all the ecologists were dead. So what happened was, instead of entering an area full of mutants where I expected to, have to fight for my life rather desperately, I entered an empty ghost town, basically, where there was just corpses scattered all over the place with quite a bit of valuable loot, but the feeling of being alone in a ghost city with such atmosphere was... that is quite special, that is quite something, and I'm hoping that this gets replicated into Stalker 2, which is basically why I'm saying all of this. I'm hoping that all of these things that I'm mentioning get replicated and then get ported over, if you will, into Stalker 2 with, they can have their own creative license and unique twist to things and all of that, of course, but I seriously hope that this does get, implemented into Stalker 2 as well. But, obviously we will see. The game doesn't even have a release date yet. We have a rough estimate of when it's supposed to be released, so yeah. Have them take their time is all I'm saying. Anyways, I was gonna talk about something else. What was it? Yes, the combat in Stalker and the gear and upgrade system. Well, in Anomaly, I would say the upgrade and repair system is a little bit too complicated, for me at least. I understand the dangers of saying this with a relatively small title like this, with an extremely devout following. I know some people really like the hardcore nature of the repair system, and I respect that. But I wouldn't personally, for my personal taste, I wouldn't mind the repair system being a little bit more simple. Plus, or at the very least, a little bit more of tutorialization into it and a little bit better UI, because currently, it doesn't really do a good job at all of explaining exactly how you need to repair and what you need to do to repair stuff. What you'll end up doing is you're collecting all sorts of stuff from all around the world, from like glue to duct tape to some polymer weaves and carbon fiber plates or whatever, and you have no idea what to do with them. Which again is kind of realistic in some sense, and adds to the hardcore nature. I respect it, but at the same time, until you figure it out, it is a little bit complicated. Anyways, what I do, so that aside, what I do really hope persists is the amount of gear modification, upgrades, and stuff that you can do. I'm sort of hoping almost for a Fallout-like system. Maybe a little bit more Stalker-esque, but in Fallout, for example, Fallout 4, you can modify your weapons to like have different receivers, different stocks, scopes, muzzles, etc., etc., and all these things that you do change the visual look of the weapon. And I'm really hoping we get a system kind of like that, where you can change different things on the gun, because you can basically do that already with. Within the game, it doesn't impact the rifles and the pistols and stuff visually. It just impacts their stats. So I'm hoping for a system that's kind of similar to that. But yeah, also for armor, obviously, and helmets and the gear and all that good stuff. But other than that, there isn't all that much more than I really would specifically like in Stalker. I think in Stalker 2, sorry. I think keeping the general atmosphere, delivering a solid continuation to the quest line, and not veering off from the familiar formula too much of an open, or at least an open, well, not open-ish, like proper open world with a pretty strong, straightforward quest line, I think is the way to go. And we know the game will be open world. It will be they claim the largest seamless open world map to date. I'm not quite sure what they mean by that. Is it like in the previous 3 Stalker games? Is it what they've made, or just ever, period? I am seriously, like, I have some high expectations for Stalker 2, but I also understand if they want to change things around. The only thing I'm hoping for is that they don't, in an effort to attract more people that haven't played Stalker, because, let's be honest here, Stalker isn't the most popular video game series ever. Its following is extremely passionate about the game, as am I, in case you couldn't hear from the voice, but it isn't the most popular thing ever, and I'm hoping that in an effort to attract new people into the series, they don't veer off too much from the formula, because it isn't necessarily the game's fault, or it isn't anything within the game itself and the design of the game itself that makes it unpopular. Not really unpopular, but doesn't have the highest popularity ever. I think if they stick to what made the previous 3 Stalker games great, that they will do a heck of a lot better than trying to quote-unquote reinvent the wheel, right? So anyways, basically I would like the atmosphere to be there more than anything else, and to have some solid Stalker survival elements to it. Anomaly hunting, mutants being scary and actually very, very dangerous, keeping a lot of the dynamics of the factions, trying to make the world as living as possible, if it can be done like an Anomaly through dynamic combat and stuff like that, that would be great. Offline combat, as it's called. But even without offline combat, trying to have your actions influence the zone and have like these things that can happen like that, I think is phenomenal. Oh, by the way, I completely forgot about this. Another way Anomaly is great at making the world seem alive is that every time there is a blowout or a Scion mission, several things happen. First of all, a lot of the stuff in-game respawns. Stuff like artifacts respawn. Stalkers that are caught outside during these anomalies get turned into zombies or die, depending on the type of storm. Is it a Psi storm or a blowout? Also... sorry about that. Also, for example, during nighttime, the mutants are more active and are more aggressive, and there are also apparently some nocturnal mutants. I haven't actually found many of those yet. Or actually, I have one, I think. Yeah, I actually have found one. But yeah, like, during nighttime, mutants are more dangerous, and the whole zone just feels more alive because of these things. So, yeah. It truly is great. Plus, the fact that as you go through areas and then kill people and stuff like that, it will change the territory that faction holds. For example, I've killed a bunch of military in Agraprom, and their military presence there is basically none right now. They have like in their main base, they have a couple of soldiers guarding it, and that's it, because I think because of the faction base, they have to have soldiers there all the time. You can't clear it out permanently. They'll keep respawning. That's just the faction base, though. But basically, throughout the region, the military's basically gone. I keep using that word a bit too much. They have a strong presence in Cordon, because I haven't cleaned them out of there, but nowhere else in the zone is the military really present anymore, because I've just shot down so many of them. On the other hand, I've been helping the ecologists out quite a bit, mostly due to me following the main storyline, and now they're all over the place. I've beaten the monolith back from the army warehouses twice or thrice, and now there's basically none of them there. I've been helping Freedom out, so now they're getting the upper hand on duty in controlling more territory. Stuff like this, and yeah. It really makes the world feel alive and engrosses you in as a part of it. Since this morning, I've started playing as the Monolith as well. Actually, since late last night, but I haven't played much last night. I've been playing as the Monolith, which is one of the factions. I doubt this will be a thing in Stalker 2, as I think they'll focus more on the storyline than the sandboxy freedom of the game, and that's sorry, that's completely fine. But in Anomaly, you can pick any of the factions, if I haven't mentioned that already, and Monolith is really, really unique. It used to be a little bit more boring because you basically just go around killing everyone. Now there's a little bit more to it. From what I've heard, I haven't tested this out yet because I haven't found any, but from what I've heard, they're friendly with the zombies in the game, which is kind of funny. But also, the game is kind of easier on them, and you find... Well, first of all, you have access to certain things that no other faction has, and I won't spoil what those things are, but basically, you do need a trade-off for the fact that you cannot interact with anyone outside of Monolith. Everyone will shoot you on sight no matter what, and actually you're supposed to shoot everyone on sight no matter what if they're not Monolith. And plus, the mutants aren't friendly with them, right? The mutants kill Monolith just as eagerly as they kill any other faction. So yeah, that's kind of interesting. They have to balance it out somehow, right? And they try and do. Plus, the amount of in Anomaly, the amount of this is something I really would like to see in Stalker 2. Unlike the whole pick any faction you want, I'd happily trade that in for a more story-driven experience. But anyways, to be honest, I'd be fine with both. Not both. Well, yes, obviously, no, I'd be fine with either. Is what I mean. However, one thing that I really would like to see in Stalker 2 is the level of customizability when it comes to the difficulty, the progression, the gameplay in general. So if you hit escape and go into settings in Stalker Anomaly, I'm not expecting this level of detail, but, you know, something more than just a difficulty screen would be nice. If you go over into Anomaly now, what you can choose to modify in the game is just mind-boggling. First of all, in terms of difficulty, there are so many modes, from Iron Man to Life Giver to timed saves, stuff like that. All sorts of things to make you immersed more into the game and adjust the difficulty just right for you. So for example, you could play in Azazel mode, which does disable all the story quests, where basically if you die, you play as a different Stalker in the zone. You just take control of him, and that's it. Your previous character's dead. You can go and find the corpse if you want. You know, that's all. Alternatively, you can play an Iron Man mode, in which, you know, if you die, that's it. You're dead forever. You need to start the game again. But you can also have Life Giver, which is for every day that you survived, sleeping doesn't count, you'll have one more life. So, for example, if you survive 3 days, you'll have 3 lives extra, so you can die 3 times, right? If you don't want to play as that, you can just play, you know, normally with loading the last save every time you die. But then again, if you don't like, if you're the kind of person that quick saves all the time, but wouldn't like that sort of gamey, cheesy element to the whole story thing, you can put on no quick saves, but timed saves instead. So every 15 minutes or every 10 minutes, the game will save for you, and what will happen is, well, you know, you don't control when you save. That can cause a few problems because, you know, technically speaking, you could save the game right before you die. That's, yeah, then yeah, you would still need to have your own hard saves every now and again. And then there's also Agony or Campfire mode, where you can basically save in only when you're in safe zones and stuff like that. All sorts of the customization options like this. But also, the amount of population in the zone, both of the Stalkers and the mutants, the dynamic faction relations, which basically means that certain factions can become friendly with one another as you kill their enemies and such. The dynamic anomalies, the helicopter patrols can be turned on or off, the Psystorms and the missions can be tweaked as to what they do and how often they appear, or if they appear at all. There's also an all-out war mode, which basically just focuses on the factions fighting each other for territory, kind of like Clear Sky, the game. and doesn't focus on any other story-based elements or anything like that. Progression is also so customizable. You can change everything from power consumption and weapon degradation and artifact respawn chance and trader prices to how much goodwill or money you earn with factions through quests and stuff, to how much repair costs and upgrade costs are in the game, and there's also a disguise system where you can turn on or off, which is really well done, and kind of hoping we get that as well, because it allows you to explore factions and areas which you regularly wouldn't be able to. So what the disguise system is, if you put on like a military uniform, the soldiers won't shoot at you because they'll think you're a soldier. But if you think, well, hold on, that's a little bit bullshit, I just put on the uniform and they assume I'm one of them. Well, you know, if you think that's bullshit, you can turn on the suspicion system as well, which basically means the longer you stare at them and the longer you do weird things around them, the more they're going to suspect you of being, you know, not one of them, and, you know, if you fill up the suspicion meter, they're going to start shooting at you. So yeah, it's the amount of content and details in Anomaly is mesmerizing. I mean, I do think that it is the absolute ultimate Stalker experience out there nowadays. If you're okay with doing away with a lot of the story from the basically all of the story from the first 3 games, and enjoying different aspects of Stalker. But anyways, I was hoping that, or I am hoping that at least some of these customization options port over into Stalker 2. I think the devs could learn a heck of a lot from looking at Anomaly. And maybe stripping away some of the elements in exchange for the story, but also keep Anomaly and my Stalker 2 wishlist. How the two are connected. So yeah, anyways, this was my Stalker 2 wishlist. I've been a little bit about this video for a while now, ever since I saw the trailer. And, kind of a mod, but it's, you know, I'm very excited. I know that recently I've been doing a lot of these, like, Stalker, oh, this is my favourite X game
any of the
previous
Stalker
my favourite strategy game of
all
all
time,
you can
just
head
on
RPG of all time,
and download it. And
I've been saying these words quite a lot in the last few videos,
because
when talking about games and stuff,
I haven't noticed a lot of people playing this.
Kingdoms of Amalur
Whenever I
try
and Google stuff about
top
the
RPGs,
quests, the storylines, and bugs, or I haven't encountered much in the way of bugs, but mostly
it's been a good time the last few weeks.
If I try and Google
for
stuff
gaming,
about
with the announcements
tutorials
and everything,
or guides to how to do something,
I had the chance to
try
talk
to figure
about
out the repair system. There's
really
very little,
titles,
which means that there's, you know,
either
not enough people
or,
making content for this, or not enough people playing this in general.
Pretty happy about that.
I do know it has a very devout.
I was talking about Crusader Kings 2 and how it's like one of my most
followings. So,
grand strategy games of all time,
anyways,
and one of my favourite strategy
games.
Games. Period.
It's
true.
Let's talk about the game now, and let's talk about
what I'm saying
2.
is, it seems like there's a lot of these games. There really aren't that many. It's just
my
that,
wish list for
over the
Stalker
last
2
2 weeks or so, I got I had
features
the chance to talk about
stuff that I would like to see.
Most
in the game
of them, if you will,
is basically this.
This is another one
with a
in
graphics
that line.
That's all.
Okay, you
amazing.
can
All 3
do
of
away
games
with
are
the
amazing.
I think the
system.
first one was my favourite.
Like I said,
this
this
guy
game
is
has
definitely considered the worst.
It is, like I said, basically a standalone game.
It does have in the community pretty much
relatively small but
is
devout following. So I'm sort of hesitant to say I would do away with anything.
So yeah.
However,
anyways.
About
that's it. That was my Stalker 2 wish list. If you have any questions about the game, if you have any questions about Anomaly, I'm still a noob at it, but feel free to ask.
I'm playing as Monolith, by the way, which is freaking amazing. And but we'll get to that in a bit.
That's about it. Thank you very much for watching. Anyways, so like I was saying, what you think about Stalker 2, what you would like to see in it, what you think is an indispensable Stalker Anomaly
feature, if you will, and
a more open sandbox experience that combines all the previous 3 Stalker games.
Have fun.
Take care. That is cool.